Hey everybody, welcome back to A Matter of Life and Maiden, the podcast of the Beast. I am Joe Labriola. And on today's episode, we're going to be talking about the best opening tracks or opening songs from the Iron Maiden studio albums. And it's kind of a ranking list again from my least favorite opening track, or the weakest in my opinion, to the best opening track, or the strongest in my opinion. So let's start off with number 17. Coming in at number 17 for me is from 1990's No Prayer for the Dying, and that's Telegunner. It's just a hokey, corny, lame song. I don't know. I've never liked Telegunner. The artwork is basically a comical version of Aces High. It's just not. I understand, Matt and I talked about this when we did the No Prayer for the Dying episode of the podcast. Like, the album itself was supposed to be jokey and kind of corny and funny, and there's a little bit of British humor in there, and there's just some kind of like sexual innuendos in it, but it doesn't work for Iron Maiden. They're grasping at straws here. They're trying to do something unique and different. You can see, Bruce kind of coming through on this one a little bit, like with his personality and like his kind of sense of humor, but it's just not successful. The song lyrics are bad. You were Telegunner. You were Telegunner. I mean, it's just repetitive, boring, much like No Prayer for the Dying is as a whole for the most part. I mean, Run Silent, Run Deep is a great song. The title track's pretty good. Bring Your Daughter to the Slaughter isn't bad. The rest of the album, struggles. Holy Smoke's okay. But, like, it's just not a good album. It's their weakest. You listen to the podcast, you've been listening to what Matt and I have been talking about, and me and myself here have been talking about now, doing solo stuff here for the last year or two. No Prayer for the Dying is my least favorite album. I think it's Matt's as well. It's always been our least favorite album. There's no redeeming qualities on it. I just don't think it's a good album. You have Bruce Dickinson, arguably, at the top of the conversation, as Matt said, as one of the greatest heavy metal singers of all time, and you're churning out stuff like this. Telegunner is unrewarding, uninspiring. It's, I love the band, so like when I digest these songs, I know what they're capable of. I know what they can do, and this is something that does not showcase them in any way, shape, or form, in a way that makes them look like one of the greatest bands of all time. This is like their dark ages. These are the years where they are struggling immensely. So Telegunner is number 17. Just uninspiring, uninteresting. Like I said, it's just a weak song. Moving on for number 17. Coming in at number 16 is from 1982's Number of the Beast record, and that's Invaders. Now, the sad thing about Invaders is it's on one of the greatest heavy metal records of all time, but it in itself is just a very, very weak song. It's not catchy, it's not good, and Matt and I talked about this on the Number of the Beast episode of the podcast. You have Bruce Dickinson, and the first song that you hear on the record with Bruce Dickinson is Invaders. Invaders, boom, ba-doo-dum, pillaging, invaders. I mean, now I will say this though, it is definitely a step or two up from Telegunner. The sad thing about this is Matt and I talk about this all the time, when you're putting it into the scope and the lens and the framework of Iron Maiden, and if you're putting it into the scope and the lens and the framework of the Number of the Beast album, this song is easily one of the weakest ones on the record. This or Gangland, but we're talking about opening tracks. So this is why this is at the bottom. The Number of the Beast record, every other song on it for the most part, probably besides Gangland, is amazing. I mean, and Gangland isn't that bad. I mean, these songs are, like I said, a step or two up from what I just said with Telegunner. But as an opening song to kick off your record, your album, like I said, to kind of see how it flows and to make things work together, and like, this is what this is about, this is our album, and you have Invaders as the opening track, And then you go into Children of the Damned. That's another thing. There's like no correlation there. You know, it's not a good flow. It's a very choppy opening. You know, it's like if you're sailing on the ocean, you know, the sea is really choppy. I mean, it's kind of choppy, and then all of a sudden, you know, it calms down and gets really cool, and it's nice, and it just flows real easy, and you can, you know, you're sailing and you're comfortable, and it's great. Like this opening is very choppy, and but then, you know, the rest of the album is just amazing. Children of the Damned, and then you get The Prisoner, and then you get 22 Acacia Avenue, and then it Number of the Beast, and then Run to the Hills, and et cetera, right down the line. But like I said, again though, it's kind of them experimenting. I mean, again, this is their third album, so while they kind of know what they want to do now, and this first album with Bruce kind of solidifies them as a band, and really they're ultimately solidified, in my opinion, the next album with Peace of Mind, when Nico joins the band. Like, that 5-piece band was amazing. And then a 6-piece when the reunion comes in '99, like that's the band. But you know, this song just doesn't have the caliber, like I said, of what the rest of the songs do. And when you know what Maiden can do and you see what they can do, and especially when you're looking at this album, like I said, this album's a really good example of that, because you can see, like, in the songs I mentioned, like After Invaders, like in a row, how amazing they are and what they can do. And then you have this opening track that's just like not that great. So that's why Invaders is at number 16. Number 15 is from 1998's Virtual 11 record, second album with Blaze Bayley, Future Real. Now, this is kind of on par for me with Invaders. It's a little bit better, you know. It's a little bit better, in my opinion, as an opening track. Now, the reason I say that is because it kind of sets the tone. It's like, hey, this is how our album starts. You know, what is real? Future real. What is real? Future real. I'm running out of time. I'm running out of breath. You know, that whole thing. But it's kind of cool because it does kind of encapsulate what the album cover's about. It talks about the title, Virtual 11. It's about virtual reality. It's about futuristic worlds. What's real? What isn't? Is this virtual reality world a real world, or is it a fictitious one? Is it all in our mind? What's tangible? What's material? You know, what isn't? It's just really cool. And I kind of like the way it kicks off the record, because then, you know, as the record progresses and goes through, now obviously this one kind of doesn't, like where Number of the Beast was, Invaders was choppy, and then it kind of went into this amazing slew of songs after the fact, and then a little choppiness towards the end of the record, then back into an amazing slew. This is kind of like Future Real, and then it goes right into Angel and the Gambler. It's like the worst song on the record. So that's why Virtual 11, when we look at, you know, our album rankings that Matt and I did, Virtual 11 does kind of come in right after No Prayer for the Dying as one of the worst records they've ever done, or one of the weakest records they've ever done, just because of that kind of like unbalanced feel. And some of the songs are pretty good and some aren't, and like you have songs on there like The Klansman that are super high caliber, awesome songs, and then you have songs like Angel and the Gambler that just aren't that great, right? But I do think, and I've said this before, I think Virtual 11 is an underrated album. Like, I just think, give it a chance. It's not as bad as what people think it is, and you can kind of see like the precursor to Brave New World on it, like in the sound, like the way it sounds in some of the songs, some of that more delay-esque kind of feel that they would use like on Final Frontier, like totally. But some of that more delay sounding stuff that they use, more spacey sounding ambience on this than a lot of the other stuff. So I like Virtual 11 a lot more than I initially did when I first started getting into Maiden and started listening to these records, you know, in the early 2000s. It's a lot more special to me now than it was then. So Future Real, really cool opening track, sets the tone. Number 14 from 2010's The Final Frontier is Satellite 15, The Final Frontier. Now, Matt and I have said this before. The Satellite 15 portion of this opening track is really cool. It's different, it's unique, it's ambient, and it's spacey. They take this kind of like more almost epic feel of an intro, kind of what they did like at the end of the If Eternity Should Fail, and kind of like what they do with some like Seventh Son and mixing in some spoken word and all this kind of stuff. But then they go and do a complete 180 and turn into like this really like just really simplistic rocker. And it's not like a refined rocker either, like a middle range rocker that they would do. It's a very, like, the Satellite 15 portion of the song is awesome. The Final Frontier portion of the song is the weaker part of it. Like, the final frontier, the final frontier, the final frontier, the final frontier. And I'm sure that y'all know, if you've been listening to the podcast and you've heard, some of my concerns about this record, I like The Final Frontier. I don't think it's a horrible album. I think it's a good album, I do. But since the reunion, it is my least favorite. I just think it's unbalanced. And there's kind of an identity crisis going on here. And this is an example of that. Like, it's like they try to do two different things. Be kind of epic, but then be kind of like mainstream sounding at the same time with this song. And it just doesn't work. And then when you go through the rest of the album and you see how unbalanced it is, like the first half of it is very like streamlined, very short rocker songs. And then the second half of the album is awesome. Like you get Isle of Avalon, you get Starblind, you get The Talisman, you get Man Who Would Be King, When the Wild Wind Blows. Like the second half of the record is killer. If they would have had one or two more songs that were like the second half of the record and the first half of this album, it would have made the album all that much better. But like they kind of like, it was lacking. Matt and I said this, the middle range rockers are lacking. The epics are lacking towards the beginning. If they would have had one or two more, like I said, it would have been a little bit better. And this opening track, in a way, I will say, like the Satellite 15 part and the Final Frontier part does kind of do a good job of kind of describing the album title and the album art. I will give them credit for that. But at the end of the day, it does fall short in a lot of ways. And, again, because when you go through the first, 4 or 5 songs on this record and they're okay, then you get to the second half and you're like, man, where was this? It's just a very unbalanced album. And, this song is an example of that. This kind of like identity crisis. I said this before, like, what is this album really trying to be? Is it trying to be more popular and futuristic sounding? Or is it trying to be more epic sounding in a way? And I think, they try to do something different after the Amazing Matter Life and Death album, which is one of my favorite albums, period. And, it just, I'm not saying it was a complete and utter disaster or failure. It just was a step down. It was a step down, in my opinion, from Brave New World, Dance of Death, and A Matter of Life and Death. So that's kind of where that's at for me. I mean, I do like the record. I think it's a pretty solid record. It's a good record. I do like a lot of the songs on it. Starblind's amazing. When the Wild Wind Blows is amazing. I like The Man Who Would Be King. I like Talisman. I like Isle of Avalon. They're all fantastic. And then the other ones kind of sprinkled there at the beginning. Like I said, they're okay, but they're nothing to write home about. And this opening track just doesn't really, knock you on your ass, and you're not like, oh man, this is what the album's about. It just doesn't have that feel. And I think other albums just do a better job of really showing you what the album's about. So moving on from that, number 13 is from 1992's Fear of the Dark. And that's Be Quick or Be Dead. Be Quick or Be Dead, and I'm going to say this, when we get to number 13 here, this is like, again, a little bit of a step up from the previous songs that I mentioned. This is kind of, it's a short, straightforward rocker that they do on a lot of their records when they open up. And this one does a good job, again, of conveying the whole fear thing. And some of the lyrics in here are actually pretty powerful for an opening track. It really does set the tone. And it really, and I Matt and I talk about this all the time, like, leaning their bellies in their ivory towers. That whole part. I mean, and this is one of those songs where, Bruce's raspiness in his voice and his vocals actually sounds really cool with the way the lyrics were constructed and with the instrumentation and in the music of the song and the way the guitars sound. And, it's actually a pretty solid it's a quick rocker, but it's a really cool opening track that sets the tone and kind of takes you into, I believe, the next song on the record. I'm trying to think here because I can't grab it right now, but the next song on the record, Afraid to Shoot Strangers, I think, or maybe it's not. But in any case, whatever the next song on the album is, it kind of flows a little bit better. And this is a more thematic record, like I said. So you get that. You get that with this record. Again, though, I will talk about Fear of the Dark. I mean, after No Prayer for the Dying, I think this is the second weakest album they've ever done. Half of the songs on it are pretty good, but there's nothing like super noteworthy outside of the title track, maybe this, and Afraid to See Strangers. I mean, like, maybe like Childhood's End on a good day. Like the rest of the album, though, it's like these songs aren't that great, you know. Wasting Love isn't that good. Like Fear is the Key. Just, you know, songs like that, Chains of Misery, like they're just, I don't know, they're just not that great. But for the opening track on this and how it kicks off, like the drums being, I mean, I think it's really cool. If they were done some more stuff in the vein of that, and this is kind of like the opposite of what I mentioned with Final Frontier, they tried to chill out a little bit on this record and do some more like ballady stuff and slower stuff, and it just didn't pan out. You know, I think they should have kept things in more of the vein of the Be Quick or Be Dead to really get that feel. So that's kind of where it's at for me. And like I said, I can't remember the order of the songs on Fear of the Dark. You know, I used to know all the stuff like the back of my hand. I can't remember what Be Quick or Be Dead segues into, what the next song is, but I'm sure it's probably a little choppy. I can't remember if it's Afraid to See Strangers or something else. But in any case, like, it's a pretty decent opener for what it is. So my hat's off to it. And for that, at number 13, when we go to number 12 and we go to number 10, when we go to number 12 through number 10, or actually really through number 9. So basically, 13 through 9 are all going to be these kind of like samey short rocker things. So, you know, enough of my rambling, but we'll go number 12 now then is from 2003's Dance of Death, and that's Wildest Dreams. Again, this is like, I like it a little bit better than Be Quick or Be Dead, and I think it's a little bit more polished, but the thing that's cool about this album is you know, in Dance of Death, is it flows pretty well. There's a couple lulls on the album, but for the most part, this record, like, it's a really cool, consistent flow. And this is kind of what the Final Frontier had missing. So, like, you get this, then you get Rainmaker, which is another awesome short little rocker, nice ditty, and then it goes into an epic with No More Lies. And then, you know, you get Montsegur, and then Dance of Death, another epic. Then you get, you know, a couple lulls. You get Gates of Tomorrow. You get New Frontier. Then you get amazing songs, Passchendaele and Face in the Sand, and those songs. And then you get Age of Innocence, A Lull, and Journeyman. So, I mean, like, this record, Dance of Death, man, you know, it takes a step up for me. You know, I used to say I think that Final Frontier and Dance of Death were tied, but the more I've listened to it over the last couple of years and digested it more, especially when Senjutsu came out and kind of went back and started listening to stuff again, and even for the purpose of doing this episode, like, Dance of Death's a damn good album. But when we ranked stuff, when Matt and I did the initial episodes, we ranked everything, right? We ranked, like, artwork and production values and listenability and all that stuff. The artwork for the Final Frontier is just, you know, leaps and bounds above Dance of Death, but the way the album's constructed on Dance of Death, I think it's just a better construction. I think it's just a better album, a little bit better than, you know, the Final Frontier. Final Frontier is the weakest in my opinion since the reunion. This is probably the second weakest, but there's some damn good stuff on this. There's some damn good stuff on Final Frontier as well. But Wildest Dreams is a really cool opener. It's one of those things that's almost like a anthemic, in the vein of like a Wasted Years, like, you know, live out your wildest dreams, do what you can do, be happy. I'm on my way, I'm going to break away, I'm going to organize some changes in my life, I'm going to exercise the demons in my past. That whole thing, like, just going to be a better person, live my life to the fullest, and live out my wildest dreams. I'm on my way. I mean, I do really like the chorus. I think it's super catchy. I'm on my way, out on my own again. I'm on my way, I'm gonna break away. I mean, it just has a really cool feel musically. And it does kind of set the tone for the album because it has like a more soft ambient sound, a little more minstrelly and Renaissance feely. Maybe not so much with this one because it does have kind of like a popular sound to it, but it's a little bit lighter. A little bit lighter than some of the other stuff, and it kind of flows with that whole minstrel vibe, and I like that. I think it sets the tone. And then, like I said, moving on to number 11, which is a little bit better in my opinion than Wildest Dreams, is from 2006's A Matter of Life and Death, and that's Different World, the opening track of that record. It's very similar to Wildest Dreams, and like I said, in that vein of wasted years and living your life to the fullest. And this song, though, has a couple transitional pieces in it where like there's a chorus and a pre-chorus and like an interlude and a bridge, and I think it's just a little bit more well-structured and well-rounded and like better developed than Wildest Dreams. It's like an improved Wildest Dreams. But there's some really cool passages in this song that I really love, you know. And the beginning starts off with Nico going, Eddie! If he says Harry or Eddie, you don't know what he says. He's talking to Steve or he's talking about Eddie. And then the drums come in. The riff is really cool. The music video for it's cool. They're in the studio doing it. Bruce's vocals are awesome. You lead me on the path, keep showing me the way. I feel a little lost, a little strange today. I think I'll take a hold of whatever comes my way. Then we'll see what happens, take it day by day. That's really cool. And then like the pre-chorus and the chorus is awesome. Like, tell me what you can hear, and then tell me what you see. Everybody has a different way to view the world. I would like you to know, when you see the simple things, to appreciate this life. It's not too late to learn. And it's like almost like there's another voice responding to that, like, don't wanna be here, somewhere I'd rather be. It's really cool. What it reminds me of is like, it's like the devil on the one shoulder and the angel on the other shoulder, like the motif that's through all of Maiden's music, like especially the Seventh Son poster. Like it's in their music constantly, but it's like you have this one voice saying like, be positive, right, appreciate what you have. Then there's other voice saying like, well, I don't want to be here. It's almost like positivity and negativity like interacting with each other. Two different worlds, different world, right? It's just a really cool thing, and it really sets the tone for Matter, Life, and Death. And that's why Matter, Life, and Death is one of my favorite albums. I mean, like, this song kicks it off, and it kicks it off really, really well. Is it the best song on the album? No. But it's a really good opener that kind of just takes you through the album and makes it awesome. And I love Different World. I really do. I mean, it's one of my favorite Iron Maiden songs, one of my favorite openers. It really is. And I know it's not one of the greatest or most epic things they've done, but in that theme, like I said, with like Wildest Dreams and the whole wasted years thing, like what are you doing with your life? Are you a good person? Make sure you're living things out the way you want them to be. I mean, I feel like it's a really powerful song too in that way. And it's kind of simple, but it's sophisticated, and that's what I like about it. Moving on from Different World, number 10 is from 1980's debut album Iron Maiden, and that's Prowler. I just think it's really cool. I just think it's awesome. And I think the reason I put this a couple notches above like Wildest Dreams and Different World and some of the other stuff is because it is like the debut record, and it really showcases like this band is who they are and what they're going to become. Like, it's just an amazing album. Amazing. Like, everything about it is awesome. There's nothing bad about it. I mean, it's about some guy sneaking through the bushes, right? Just doing some shady stuff, some not so mature stuff, some kind of gross stuff, right? Streaking or doing something, you know. He's doing some crazy stuff. But anyway, like this song is just so cool, and like the musicianship on it and the guitars and like this early raw sounding Iron Maiden. It kind of, you know, when it opens up the record with this and you go through the original Iron Maiden album, you can hear that rawness throughout. And I mean, there's something special about it. There's something special about the original Iron Maiden album. I know, you know, it's probably not, you know, the very top of the list, and I think Matt and I both kind of rated it like middle of the pack when it came to records, and I know for some people this is their favorite album, and you know, it's hard to argue with them. There is something magical about it. I mean, there really is. It has this really unique sound, and I don't know what it is, but it's very, very prog rock sounding almost, but like you can hear that flair of metal. It's a record that I would put up there with like Judas Priest's like Sad Wings of Destiny, and Black Sabbath's like Paranoid, as one of the albums that really showcased the genre. I mean, it's like one of those raw first, like early records that showcase metal, and I think that's what's so cool about it. It's different than like Zeppelin. It's different than, Jethro Tull, but you can hear like both of the influences in that. Just like I said with Sabbath and Priest and then Maiden. And Maiden come a little bit later than those guys. But this album does have that rawness and that old school feel. And I think that's what makes it so cool. And Prowler, transitions awesome into whatever version of the record you're looking at, like Sanctuary, and then Remember Tomorrow, and then into Running Free, and then Phantom of the Opera, and Transylvania, and Charlotte the Harlot, and the list goes on, right, all the way through to the end with Iron Maiden. So, I mean, it's just this really raw album and raw song that kicks off with a bang, and, like, it never lets up, really. There are some softer songs in it, but they have these, like, moments of heaviness, like Remember Tomorrow starts off soft, but it gets heavy. Phantom of the Opera starts off with just a rip-roaring time. It's almost like proto-thrash when you listen to it. And that's really cool. I mean, that's why it's at number 10 for me. Moving on from Prowler, though, number 9 from 1981's Killers record is Ides of March. Now, this one and Prowler were, I initially had them, transposed the other way around. I put Prowler at number 9, and I put Ides of March at number 10, but something about Ides of March, it's an instrumental opener, and it's the only instrumental opening track that they've ever had, period, on their entire discography, ever. 17 studio albums deep, and this is the only one. This thing is unbelievable. I mean, it is a phenomenal opener. Like, phenomenal. And it leads right into Rothschild after this. I mean, it's perfect. It's perfect. And when you listen to it, you can hear, like, the Ides of March is about the assassination of Julius Caesar, right? He's getting stabbed by the senators in the Senate, 40-some times or whatever it was, right? 44 times. Like, Brutus, Cassius, those people who arranged it. You can hear the struggle, like, between the guitars and how they sound and the solos. It's like he's fighting for his life as he's being murdered, and he's laying there on the steps just bleeding out. I mean, it when you listen to it, you can see that. If you know what the Ides of March are about, and you're a historian like me, and you're a metal guy like me, and you're a music guy, and you're into this kind of stuff, you can clearly picture that, the struggle. And I think that's what Steve was going for when he did this, right? And it's just awesome. And Killers is an awesome album. And the thing that's cool about Ides of March, too, is, like, much like the original Iron Maiden album, like, this one even more so. It's super fast, like the album itself. It's very, like I said, proto-thrashy. It's a very proto-thrashy kind of album. And the whole record is like these really quick songs. There's really nothing on Killers that is that long. I mean, I think the longest song might be 5.5, 6 minutes. Prodigal Son, maybe Killers. Like, other than that, like, they're really fast, like, songs with a lot of, like, up-tempo stuff going on here. I mean, it's just... But that's the way it's designed, and I think Ides of March does a good job of kind of, like, really kicking it off from the beginning and letting you know, like, hey, this is an album that's going to be fast, with rip-roaring heavy guitars that shred. And I think, like I said, proto-thrash is all I can keep saying, because it really does have that feel. Really does have that feel. And I know some people compare it to, like, punk and the speed of punk and stuff, and you can kind of hear that, maybe not punk per se, but there are definitely some kind of, like, punky elements on it. But then again, that could also be, on the other side of the coin, thrashy elements, proto-thrash too. So it's kind of like a melding of. That's what makes metal. I mean, that's what it is. It's kind of like these fast guitar tones and licks and riffs and all this crazy stuff mixed with, it's. But this is another example of that, and I think the first two Iron Maiden albums are clearly capable of showcasing that. Now, as I said, we did 13 through 9. Now we're coming in at number 8, and when we hit number 8, these songs take like another level up. Like it's another level or two up from the previous ones I said. These ones aren't like short rockers. Well, some are, but most of these are actually really kind of like epic in design and epic openers. Might be one or two coming down the list here that are a little bit shorter, but some of these are just downright epic. Number 8 is from 2021 Senjutsu, and that's the title track, Senjutsu. Just a different opener, a more middle pace, slow, almost pseudo-epic at the beginning. I mean, the song, I think, is over 8 minutes long. So, this thing is a gargantuan opener. And it sets the tone for the record. It's the title track at the beginning, first track. This is our album. This was about. It's bombastic. It's experimental. It has different sounds on it. We are doing something big with this album. And I think the title track showcases that to a T. Really sets the tone. And then you kind of get a short rocker after this with Stratego, and then you know, as you go down the line, you get all the different things from this new record, right? That comes. So, Writing on the Walls after that, you get Lost in a Lost World, you get Days of Future Past, you get Time Machine, Goes in the Darkest Hour, then you get the 3 steamrolling epics at the end, and Death of the Celts, The Parchment, and Hell on Earth. But this really sets the tone, and like I said again, when you're looking at reunion albums, this is kind of, again, I'm going to bring up Final Frontier once again. This is where Final Frontier missed the mark. It was like, you have no steamroll at the beginning, and Final Frontier is like an 8-minute song too, or something like that. I mean, it's a longer song. It's like 7 minutes, 8 minutes. Take Senjutsu and Final Frontier and compare them. I mean, Senjutsu is just better in my opinion. It's just a better job of conveying the album, a better song in general, better songwriting. It's more of, this is a good mixture of ideas that set a tone for a theme, as opposed to what they did with Satellite 15 and Final Frontier. So, number 8, Senjutsu, just really cool. Nico's drumming on it is absolutely fantastic. The beginning with the gong is awesome. Like, it's just a really, really cool pseudo-epic opener, and I love it. I love it. In the same kind of vein as Senjutsu, moving on, I think it's slightly better, and I'll tell you why. Number 7 from 2015's Book of Souls record is If Eternity Should Fail. Why this is slightly better for me than Senjutsu is because everything I mentioned, I'll echo from Senjutsu to If Eternity Should Fail, sets a tone for the record, talks about, in a way, like, you know, your soul and the transition, and how your life can carry on after the fact. The spoken word at the end of Eternity Should Fail is why it's a notch above Senjutsu. The whole I am Necropolis, I am formed of the dead, that whole bit, that was an amazing, almost pseudo-epic, again, tacked on to the end of this to make it just a little bit better than Senjutsu, in my opinion. And it sets the tone. It really sets the tone for the record. And while I listened to the newer version, or the previous version, Eternity Has Failed, on Bruce's new solo record, The Mandrake Project, I just think If Eternity Should Fail is it's a better refined record, or a better refined album, or song, right? Scratch the album song record part, I said. Better refined song than Bruce's like proto version of it. You know, I think they took it and they did some things to it and changed some things with it, and I just think, when you listen to the Mandrake Project version of it versus the Book of Souls version, I just think the Book of Souls version is far superior. It's just better, in my opinion. Really sets the tone, too. It has, like, this jungle feel with some of the trumpets and stuff at the beginning. Like, Here's the Soul of a Man. It makes you feel like you're in, like, the Mexican wilderness. Like, right? Like, where the Mayans are at. I mean, it makes you feel like you're there, and it does a really good job of that, especially at the end with the Necropolis thing and everything. It's just... it's a damn good opener. One of the coolest. And like I said, after this, you know, it just segues. Speed of Light isn't that great, but then you get Great Unknown, into the amazing The Red and the Black, into The River Runs Deep, into Book of Souls, the first disc, and then you go into Death of Glory. You get Shadows of the Valley. Then you get 2 lulls with the pretty bad Tears of a Clown and Man of Sorrows, and then the amazing closer and Empire of the Clouds. It's a great record. And this is a great opener. So, that's why it's number 7. Moving on from number 7. Number 6 from 1995's The X Factor is Sign of the Cross. This is the hidden gem of 1990s Iron Maiden. This is one of the coolest epics ever. It's an amazing song. Blaze did a really good job recording it, but it is a shame that it wasn't recorded with Bruce and Adrian in the band, because a re-recorded version of this would be astronomical. I mean, like, when you hear it live nowadays, when they played it, when they did Rock in Rio, when they were touring with Brave New World, and they played it, and when they just did it on the Legacy of the Beast, these past couple, tours that they did, in 2019, 2018, 2022. I mean, I've seen it 3 times. It's just three times live, and it never gets old. It's an amazing thing that sets the tone. It leads amazingly into Lord of the Flies. It really sets that dark and atmospheric tone for the X Factor album as a whole. It's kind of a depressing album, kind of a somber album, but it's great for what it is, and it's an epic to open the album. It's the most epic track on the album to open it. And that's the thing about X Factor, why, Matt and I talk about it sometimes. The thing about the X Factor where it's missing is there's if they would have had 1 or 2 more epics on this, it could have been great. And if Bruce was on it, oh my god, what a record. And I think, like I said this before, and I've argued this in the past, A Matter of Life and Death has the same kind of themes about war and religion like the X Factor has, but it does it to a much richer and a much more refined and powerful and excellent degree, in my opinion. And that's kind of what Bruce's X Factor looks like. It's a matter of life and death. And Adrian's X Factor looks like. It's a matter of life and death. So that's where Sign of the Cross is. I mean, it's an amazing song. It's a hidden gem. One of the greatest of all time. Listen to it. Just phenomenal. Standing Alone in the Wind and Rain, Feeling the Fears. I mean, it's the lyrics are great. Davey's solo is amazing. The riff, the has a seventh son of a seventh son feel to it. Has the Ram the Ancient Mariner epicness to it. It's one of those epic songs. It's epic, just epic in every sense of the word, and that's why it's where it is on this record. Now, moving on from that, number 5 from 2000's Brave New World is The Wicker Man. The reason I put this song at number 5 is because, again, this might be just a personal thing, but this is the reunion of Iron Maiden. And Matt and I have said this before. This is the 6-piece band in 1999. Bruce and Adrian come back. They become a 6-piece. They keep Yannick. This is Maiden as we've known them now for the last 25 years. So I tear up. I mean, sometimes too, when Matt said, Adrian comes out and he plays the first chords of The Wicker Man when you're watching the Rock in Rio DVD, and you're like, okay, Iron Maiden's back. Iron Maiden is back. And Bruce starts singing. That's why this is at number 5. And with that being said, this song sets the tone for the Brave New World record, and again, it's just one, and it's amazing because it's kind of like, you light the Wicker Man on fire and he starts to burn, and there's, the virgins inside or whatever, but the sacrifice inside. This is exactly what this song does. It lights the album on fire, it lights your mind on fire, and when you listen to it, you literally, every song just is off of that fuse from the Wicker Man, and it just keeps burning in a good way. Like, it's amazing. It just cruises. It cruises. This song is absolutely fucking awesome. It's become one of my favorite openers ever, and it's my favorite guitarist again. And his solo in this, Adrian's solo, it's like he's back. He is back in the band too. Like, this is what was missing in the 90s. Bruce and Adrian were missing, and it's amazing. It's amazing. And Brave New World was one of my favorite Iron Maiden albums. Like, Matt and I said this before, the only reason why we rank it a little bit lower than some of the other stuff is because it really, truly does lack an epic. But, with that being said, the whole album in itself is epic. There are times where I go back to this and I listen to it and I can't get enough of it. I mean, at the end of the day, it's one of my favorite Maiden albums. It's one of the first Maiden albums I listened to, and I know I've said this a million times, but this and Peace of Mind were some of the first ones I've listened to. And so it holds a special place in my heart. It's my brother's favorite Iron Maiden album. It's a lot of people that I've known over the years' favorite Iron Maiden album, just because it has a little bit of something for everyone. And every song on it is rich, and every song on it is solid. There's not a bad song on this record. There's no duds. This thing is awesome from beginning to end, and it starts off with The Wicker Man. And that's why it's so powerful to me and why it's number 5. Because of the reasons I mentioned. Adrian's back, Bruce is back, Iron Maiden's back when they come back and they play that Rock and Rio show and you see it. And it's just like, damn, they're back and they're stronger than ever. That's why it's a number 5 for me. An amazing song, amazing solos. Iron Maiden's back at that point, like I said. Moving on from The Wicker Man, number 4 is from 1988's Seventh Son of a Seventh Son, and that's Moonchild. Wow, what a way to start this record off. As most of you know, Seventh Son of a Seventh Son from, their golden era 1980s albums is probably my least favorite. But Moonchild is one of my favorite songs on the record, and it segues perfectly into Infinite Dreams. Then you get Can I Play With Madness and The Evil That Men Do. It's just an album that's awesome. Like, it's a great concept. It's just, I guess for me, with Maiden, I like my stuff when they're more thematic. I like it when they do a little bit of taste of different things for everyone. I like Seventh Son of a Seventh Son a lot, but the album as a whole, with that concept, I think they did a really good job with it, because they did it in a way where you can listen to the songs individually and not even correlate them with the concept, or listen to them as a whole and it correlates. I just don't think it's as powerful as some of their other work that they've done. So, with that being said, though, Moonchild is absolutely phenomenal. Hear the Mandrake scream, I love that. 7 Deadly Sins, 7 Ways to Win, 7 Holy Paths to Hell, when your trip begins. Just the way it starts off, it's telling you this is how the album's going to start. 7 Deadly Sins, this is what it's about. I mean, it's amazing. So, it's so good. And it really fuels the record. And seeing this live, when I first saw Maiden on Somewhere Back in Time, that tour, and they played this, and Davey came out with his amazing, just solo, man, it really blows your ass away when you see this stuff live. And I got an appreciation for Seventh Son a hell of a lot more when I went back and I saw Somewhere Back in Time. Truly. That made me appreciate, because I love Power Slave already, but it made me really appreciate Somewhere in Time and Seventh Son a hell of a lot more when I saw that tour, and especially this song and the album as a whole, Moonchild. My brother likes Seventh Son a lot too, and one buddy I used to hang out with who met in junior high school, he was a huge fan of Seventh Son. It was one of his favorite Maiden albums. He loved it. So he liked the whole Aleister Crowley concept and all those things. So it was interesting to see how there's a little bit of differences in where we kind of fall with these albums and where we're at. And Moonchild is definitely an amazing opener. Sets a tone for the record, sets a tone for the album, encapsulates the album. Artwork really talks about the mysticism and the fantasy and the mythology behind the concept that they came up with, that Steve came up with. And I just think it's really cool. And again, musicianship-wise, they're at the height of their career at this point. Like, they're churning out some of the most progressive metal ever. This is probably, in terms of the 80s stuff that they've done, this and Somewhere in Time as a whole, maybe not just one or two songs, but this is some of the most progressive metal ever made, in my opinion, when you're listening to Seventh Son of a Seventh Son and Moonchild and what they did with it, and the rest of the record. The song itself, Seventh Son. I mean, very, very awesome album. And this song is no exception. It sets the tone, like I said. Moving on from Moonchild. Number 3 is from 1983's Peace of Mind, and that's War Eagles Dare. Much like I said with Wicker Man, like, this is the lineup in the 80s. This is when Nico comes in the band, and it's the first song on the record, and what they failed to do with Bruce by having him sing on Invaders first and then showing off his pipes through the rest of the album, they hit you straight away on War Eagles Dare with, like, this is our new drummer, Nico McBrain. I mean, how he plays and his timing and his accents and all this stuff that he does that is just like, just nothing against Clive, but like, it just blows him away. Like, it's just, he, like they say in the documentary, some of the early days documentaries, like, he's an octopus. Like, Nico's an octopus, man. How does he have the skill to hit all these accents and these notes simultaneously on his kit? It's insane. And Peace of Mind is an amazing record. It's one of my favorites from Iron Maiden. I mean, it's up there for me. It's one of the best Iron Maiden albums of all time. It has something for everyone. This song segues perfectly into Revelations, segues perfectly into Flight of Icarus, and Down with Your Boots On, into The Trooper, Still Life, Quest for Fire, Sun and Still, all this on To Tame a Land, everything on this album is awesome, and this sets the tone. It showcases Nico as a drummer. It showcases this whole idea of, hey, look, this whole record's going to be about Where Eagles Dare is a movie with, Clint Eastwood. It's about World War II, like fighter pilots, right? And it showcases that, hey, this song's going to be about movies and literature and things we're passionate about and film and all these things. And there's something for everyone on it. And not only does it do a good job of showcasing that, it also showcases the newest member of the band and shows how tight the band is in unison and how amazing they are when they play. And Nick is a perfect fit for this band. And when you hear this song and the rest of the record, you can hear that he's like 2 levels above Clive. And it's just absolutely phenomenal. Where Eagles Dare, number 3, amazing. Number 2, from 1984's Power Slave, Aces High. I've said this a million times. Aces High and the 2 Minutes to Midnight is probably one of the best tandem openers ever on any album, period. And then the tandem closer with Power Slave and Rhyme of the Ancient Mariner. But when you hear Aces High at the very beginning, like, I mean, this is Iron Maiden at the start of their career. Seeing this song now, I mean, multiple times live, probably over a dozen times live, close to it at least. I mean, it never gets old. Never gets old. Battle of Britain, World War II, they're flying their Spitfires over, right? I mean, it's absolutely phenomenal. Legacy of the Beast Tour, they had a replica Spitfire. I mean, when you see this stuff live, too, like I said, it just adds another dimension. And hearing this song live and watching the music videos for it and actually seeing the band play it, it never gets old. The solos are amazing. Dave's amazing whammy squeals and screaming and dive bombing and all that stuff he does on it. It's unbelievable. Same thing with Where Eagles Dare. Just this song into 2 Minutes to Midnight, into Lost for Words, into Flash of the Blade, into The Duelist, into Back in the Village, Power Slave, Rhyme, sets the tone. This is them just firing on all cylinders. They're top of their game, top of their career. There's nobody better at this point in time than Iron Maiden in 1984. This is like the stuff of legends. This is metal to the extreme. And it is perfect. And the thing that's cool about this is it doesn't really showcase the album cover per se with like the idea of pharaohs and things like that. But in a way it does, because it's so rich and so powerful. And, the single cover for Aces High is Eddie in the cockpit, but it really does a good job of conveying that. But then, like I said, it segues into 2 minutes, too, with Eddie with the rifle at the United Nations. It has this kind of war motif and, Egypt and, like, kind of the battle of who is going to be the God King on Earth when we're talking about World War II and that motif. Like, what nation is going to reign supreme at the end of it? It's kind of interesting. And obviously the Allies win that, and they take that, and then the Cold War starts later. But it's kind of cool because then 2 Minutes to Midnight is kind of like a continuation of Aces High, and then the Cold War. It's like, it's a history lesson in the making. And I think it's really awesome that this is the opener for that. It's like, hey, we're going to start with World War II, and then we're going to travel a little bit, and we're going to go to Cold War. Then we're going to do Lost for Words Big War, maybe talk about maybe some Egyptian stuff. Then we're going to talk about George and the Dragon, little fantasy motif. The Duelist, a little bit of musketeer fighting, right? That's a Ridley Scott movie. Well, I'm going to Back in the Village. That's Vietnam, little history lesson. The Prisoner, maybe, part 2. Then we'll talk about Power Slave, which is ancient Egypt again. Then, hey, you know what? We'll do Salmon Taylor Coleridge and Rhyme of the Ancient Mariner. That's like, piracy, stuff like that, 1700s. It's just amazing. An all-around amazing tour de force. This album is killer. It's a history lesson. Most of their albums are. It's like a history lesson through literature, history, philosophy, science fiction. It's Iron Maiden is the academics metal band. And I'm an academic, so Iron Maiden is the academics metal band. And this is another example of that. So hats off again, Eddie and the boys, for this one. So, number 1. Probably already know what it is. 1986's Somewhere in Time. The title track, Caught Somewhere in Time, the opening track. This is the best, in my opinion. This thing sets the tone. I've said this before, I'll say it again. There's a legendarium for Iron Maiden with Somewhere in Time. Everything is related to the album cover. The single covers, the album cover, the song titles, everything. And this is the thing that hits it home. This is the home run. The grand slam. This and wasted years in a sea of madness, and heaven can wait. In the loneliest long distance runner. In a stranger in a strange land, a deja vu into Alexander the Great. Going back to Power Slave, going back to Egypt when Alexander goes and conquers, right? It's just really cool. Now, and like I said, there's nothing better. And, you know, as most of you know, my two favorite albums, which is, I mean, from the 80s anyway, at least, are Power Slave and Somewhere in Time. And it makes perfect sense why they're this way. You know, and sometimes when I'm in a mood for a more World War II motif, or kind of like a more heavy metaler sound, I'm going to go with, you know, Power Slave. Sometimes when I'm feeling the newer kind of feel and the synths are added and that more kind of like ambient and delay sounding feel, you know, it's Somewhere in Time. But you all know this, Adrian Smith is my favorite guitarist in the band, and this is his album, Somewhere in Time. So the fact that this opening track conveys not only his skill as a player and Dave's skill as a player, and just where the band is after the Gargantuan Power Slave and what they're trying to do and put things in a different perspective, in a different vein, and a different feel. And that artwork, the most incredible artwork to this day, it's my favorite piece of art in music, period, is the Somewhere in Time album cover. Blade Runner is my favorite science fiction movie. This thing checks all the boxes all the way down the line. It encapsulates the legendarium of this album and Maiden, where they really start making albums and whole in the totality of albums based on the cover. And there aren't, I've said this before when I did like album ranking covers or my favorite Eddies or whatever it was, you know, it was just like everything is related to the album cover and the theme. There is no, like, you know, for instance, I said this before, like Power Slave is a Pharaoh Eddie on the front and Mummy Eddie, but then they have, like, you know, World War II fighter pilot and the United Nations version of Eddie, and they're just different. They're not all related to the central theme, and this is the first time they do it, and they do it on Seventh Son as well, and it's perfect, and they've done it, you know, throughout their career since then. But especially on the last two records, Senjutsu and the Book of Souls. But this really, really, really is the cream of the crop for me. I mean, in terms of musicality and stuff too, like, wow. Just the new keyboard accents to the songs. Just everything. Guitar synthesizers in general, keyboard accents. Michael Kenny coming in to play keyboards live for him. I mean, it's just, this is Maiden as we know it. This is the beginning of modern day Maiden, in my opinion. I said this when we did the Somewhere in Time episode, but everything about this is amazing to me. That's my list from 17 down to number 1, and I will post it up here so y'all can see it and take a gander at it and see where I rank the stuff from the weakest to the strongest opening track, in my opinion. Keep doing what you're doing. Like I said, listening to your metal music, listening to Iron Maiden. Make sure you're going out there and digesting some of these albums if you haven't yet. Some of the ones you maybe haven't given a chance, go back and revisit. Check them out again. Listen to the records once more. They're really powerful. They're really great. Make sure, if you haven't got tickets yet, to go see Iron Maiden out there on the Future Past tour this year. They're doing it here. I'm going to see them November 8th in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. I'm so pumped. It's coming up pretty soon. It's June already. So, you know, less than half a year away, and I'll be going to see them. This will be my 10th Iron Maiden show. This will be my 10th time seeing them. My 10th time seeing them on my 6th different set list and 5th different tour. I've seen them on Somewhere Back in Time twice. I saw them on the Final Frontier North American tour twice. I saw them on Maiden England once. I saw them on Book of Souls once. I saw them on Legacy of the Beast, the 2019 dates twice, and then just recently 2022 when they added the Senjutsu realm in with the first 3 tracks from Senjutsu, and then this time for Future Past. So I'm very, very excited, very, very pumped, and truly, when I see this tour, I'll have pretty much seen every piece of history that I've wanted to see from Iron Maiden in terms of the songs I wanted to see for the most part, if they keep the set list the same, and everything else. So I'm very excited. So again, this has been Joe Labriola from A Matter of Life and Maiden, the podcast of the Beast. Remember, Maiden's life and the rest is history. Everybody enjoy yourselves out there. Take care of yourselves. Up the irons. Long live Eddie and the boys. See everybody next time.